Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Christine and I like to read dark and disturbing things. Today I have a book review for you, How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. So let's get into it. All right, so I finished this book about a week ago, How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix, and I'm excited to talk about it. I finally have had time to sit down and make a video. So first, I just wanted to kind of talk about Grady Hendrix as an author a little bit as far as what experience I've had with him. I have read several of his books, and I would say that while none of them like completely blew me away, none of them were 5 stars for me, they're all pretty good. He does a good job of like injecting humor into his horror and kind of creating a very branded type of horror that sells well. So for example, My Best Friend's Exorcism, I'm sure everyone has seen this because this cover is absolutely stunning. It looks like an old VHS cassette tape, and it is set in the 80s, and it very much has a lot of 80s references and things that really sold this book as a book itself, despite whatever is in here. So I think he does a really good job at that. I quite like this book a lot. The next book I don't own, but I read was Horror Store, and this one looks like a IKEA catalog type thing. And this is about a girl who works in an IKEA type place. And I really enjoyed this one, I think, because I've worked retail pretty much my entire life. And I think anyone that works retail will appreciate a lot of the things that happened in this book. The next book I read, I'm going to read it because I always mess it up. The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I feel like this is probably the book that I see most people talk the most about, or that they love the most from Grady Hendrix. I have to say, this one for me was just okay. There are a few excellently written horror scenes in this book. One of them involving rats, another one with our main character in the attic. If you've read this, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Both of those scenes blew me away and will be living in my head for a very long time. But the story as a whole just didn't do it for me. I know a lot of people love this book, but I think I gave this one like 3 stars. And lastly, I just picked this up last night. This is like the Bible for a lot of people who are vintage horror collectors. And it's Paperbacks from Hell, where he basically has, I mean, just his love for horror is evident in it. I haven't had a full chance to take a look at it, but just going over all of like the horror books from the past, and specifically like from the 80s, and making it really fun to collect these again and having them reprint. And I can't wait to, I broke my no buy for this and something else, but that's another story. So this was his nonfiction work. He has a few other novels that I haven't read yet. So that is my experience with Grady Hendrix so far, and why, when I saw that this book was coming out, I was cautiously excited. I was excited because it said haunted house. I do love a good haunted house trope, a good haunted house book. But I wasn't sure if this one's going to be for me, because none of the other ones have, as much as I've enjoyed them, like 3.5, 4 stars. I've never given anything 5 stars. So I was very cautious when this came out. But what got me really jazzed was my copy came with some artwork here. And on the inside, we have a book plate that says "Obey the Puppet Worm." And it has this little character here, which was really nice to have, like, put a face to that character. So what is this book about? This book is about a pair of siblings, Mark and Louise, who both find out that their parents have passed away at the same time. They both were in the same car, and they were in a car accident, and all of a sudden their lives are turned upside down. Louise lives on the West Coast. She flies across the country to help take care of her family's house and to, you know, have a funeral and everything like that. And when she gets home, she realizes that her brother, we realize that there's not a great sibling relationship there. First of all, Mark didn't even tell Louise that their parents died right away. He waited 2 days to give her a call. So she's already like, what the heck is going on? Next, when Louise gets to the house, a company shows up that was hired by Mark to just come in and clean everything out and take care of the house. He doesn't even want to go in there. He wants nothing to do with it. And she's just like, whoa, 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 whoa. You know, I just literally found out that they passed. Let me have some time to process this. We don't need to rush. Let's walk through the house. I'm willing to go through the house and go through some of their belongings and maybe collect some of the things that had some sentimental value to us. And they just are really butting heads and have two totally different ways of dealing with the aftermath of their parents passing. So Mark does not even want to step inside the house. He wants nothing to do with it. He's already made plans for them to be cremated without talking to anybody, whereas Louise wants to take her time and process this a little bit more. And so we just see these two characters clash a lot. So Louise just kind of breaks into the house when he's not there and to take a look around and see what's going on. She notices that some things are not quite right. Her mom left her purse at the house, and her dad's cane is just laying in the middle of the floor. Both of those are items that neither of them would normally leave the house without. So she's already thinking something's not quite right in this house. Also, she's walking around. She notices that the attic has been her dad has taken 2x4s and just nailed them across the opening. So nothing can get out or in. And she's like, this is all really weird. But she tries to rationalize everything in her head as she's going through, but she knows something is not quite right. So there is other family members that are involved, aunts, uncles, and cousins, and one of them happens to be realtors. So she agrees to stop by the house, walk through it, and see if they can sell this house and then, split the money and move on back to their own lives. So these siblings can just get on with their life and not have to deal with this anymore. She does a walkthrough and she says, I know the house business is booming right now. However, this house is haunted and I can't sell it until you get someone to take care of the spirits that are living in this house. And our two characters, Mark and Louise, have very different reactions. Louise is very much a skeptic and she doesn't quite believe any of that. Whereas Mark is like, oh my gosh, what if those are the spirits of our parents? We can't sell our house now. We have to, preserve every little bit of them that we can. And so our brother and sister are just butting heads, and the story continues from there with how they're going to deal with this house and how they are going to move on with their lives. So there are several themes that are explored in this story. One of them, of course, being dealing with death and how different people have different ways of doing that. Different families, some don't like to talk about it at all. Some are very open or celebrate the lives of those have passed. And this really just kind of gets into how everyone has their own way of dealing with things. And in fact, the book is kind of broken up into the stages of grief, like anger, acceptance, depression, that kind of thing. So I thought that was really clever that Grady Hendrix did that. I believe he did that with Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, where he broke it up, and because it's a book club, they kind of put it into chapters of different books from the past. So I think he is very good at making his book not just a novel, but like an entire experience. So I do really enjoy that. So while our characters are dealing with death and just kind of coming to terms with what's happened, and not just emotionally, but all of the things that need to happen in the house after their parents have passed, it really did have me feeling and thinking about my own parents. I'm lucky that both of my parents are still with me, but it really had me thinking, if I was in this situation, having to go through all their belongings, I was really putting myself in the shoes of these main characters, and I kept finding my mind wandering to think how I would be dealing with that stuff. So that was a little real for me. But our main characters are kind of going through, Louise has decided to go through the house, and her mom was a big collector of dolls and puppets, and actually she made her own puppets. And there is like an entire backstory about the puppets and her mom with the puppets, because she used them to do some kind of religious like teaching or something, or maybe something like Sunday school type stuff. So she was using them as some kind of play for religious beliefs and to help spread the word of different stories. So the mom was very into making all of these puppets. She had several ones that, I mean, they all had their own personalities and they all taught about different things. And Grady Hendrix really kind of gets into the background of, like, you learn a little bit about puppetry in the puppetry world. So I found that kind of fascinating. I've never read about that before. And I liked that there was a story behind it. We weren't just in this haunted house that happened to have, you know, creepy dolls and things for no reasons. I really appreciated that there was a backstory to all of that. Another thing that we're really dealing with is just this sibling rivalry between Mark and Louise. It is there from the very start, and it is there throughout the entire story. It never stops. And I am the oldest in my family. I have one biological brother that I grew up with, and he's a couple years younger than me. So I felt like I could really identify with Louise and that whole feeling of being the first and really having that type A personality, you know, where you earn everything for yourself. You don't really ask for a lot. You go out and get what you want and make it happen. And just being really fiercely independent. Whereas her brother, she views him as someone that just lets people bail him out all the time. He's always, you know, asking his mom for help. He can never do anything on his own. He doesn't try hard enough to do anything. And we really get to know these characters throughout the story. They are not super likable to begin with, but as the story goes on, they grow as characters. And I liked that we really explored that even though we could be related to someone and we think we know them, we don't always know the whole story. They have a whole background of why they act in the way they do and say the things they do. And we don't always know what that is. And that's true for everybody in life, not just family or friends. We don't know why someone reacts a certain way. We have no idea what's going on in their life. And they really kind of looked into that. And then you start to see the motivations and the reasons for why Mark acts the way he does, why Louise has these preconceived notions of him. And maybe those aren't the whole truth. And it was really nice to watch these characters grow and kind of the push and pull between them. I mean, just when you think they're getting along, it just takes one thing and then boom, they're back to fighting like cats and dogs. And I feel like that is so true for siblings. At least with me and my brother and I, when we were younger, we would beat the heck out of each other. We would beat each other up. And then, but if someone else wanted to mess with him, oh no. No. I was not going to let that happen. He is mine to torture. So I really liked the look at these imperfect characters and their imperfect family and just how they all act, because it made it very real. All right, we got all that serious stuff out of the way. I want to get into the part about this book that I loved the most. And Grady Hendrix did a really good job at towing the line and crossing back and forth over horror, humor, cheesiness, but not too cheesy, and really just bringing it all together. We've got some serious things going on. We've got some violent things going on, but we're still having a really good time the whole time. At least I was. And I think it is all in part of this particular character that he has created, which sets the story apart from other stories. You know, haunted house, this whole thing, there's nothing new about that, and that's okay. But the thing that he brought that was very new to the story was this character, and I absolutely love this character. I don't think it's any secret that there's some doll horror and some puppet horror in this book, but yeah, I just loved the scenes with this character in it. It gets pretty violent. It had me laughing. It had me cheering. This character has his own like battle cry or cheer, and I just freaking loved it. I loved it so much. I could totally see them making this into a movie, and And yeah, this is really what brought everything together for me, was this character, and I absolutely loved it. Now, if I had to nitpick, there are a few small things I didn't 100% love about this book. One of them being that I feel like the climax of the story was somewhere towards the middle. The part that I was really into and cheering, and I was like, yes, this is so great. And then I wouldn't say that it totally fizzled out at the end. They did try to make kind of a pretty grand ending as well, but for me, it just didn't hit hard as that middle section. And I wanted to be left just with that same feeling, and I didn't quite have that. And that might just be me, but so it's just a tiny thing that I didn't care for. There are a few scenes that I think were dragged out a little bit longer than necessary, but again, these are just minor complaints. These are minor things I would tweak. Overall, the pacing was pretty well done. I feel like there's so much I want to talk about in this book, but you know, I don't want to spoil it at the same time. This by far has been my favorite Grady Hendrix book. If he writes more like this, I will be so happy, and he would be an instant buy for me every single time. Oh, I do want to mention one other thing. I think that Grady Hendrix does an excellent job at writing from a woman's perspective. There are a lot of writers that cannot do this at all. And when I think about it, he pretty much, all the books I've read anyway, have been from a female perspective, and he does a really great job. I would say specifically there's a scene or two where our main character Louise has an interaction with her ex, who's also the father of her child, which is why she's still in contact with him. And there's a few times I'm just like, yes, Grady Hendrix gets it. He gets women. So I just had to throw that in there. So overall, I would give this 5 pumpkins. That's stars. 5 stars for this book. While I have a few tiny little things I would change, overall it was just amazing. I was cheering. My husband's like, what are you reading? Why are you laughing over there? And I was just like, caca-wee-wee. And then he looks at me like I'm crazy. Let me know what you think if you've read this. I've already watched some of other booktubers' reviews on this, and we all seem to feel about the same way. However, I'm starting to see people who weren't 100% in love with it like I was. So I like to hear all kinds of feedback and what you thought about this book. What is your favorite Grady Hendrix book? I have a few I haven't read, so I need to know if there's any that I need to get to. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay spooky.